A lot of people are interested in health and fitness these days, and to that end, they spend a lot of time in the gym or out running in a bid to try and build more muscle and increase their physical fitness. But while this is an admirable aim, it may be an example of us having the wrong priorities. Why? Because these days we don't use our bodies half as much as we use our brains. Our brains are what we use for the majority of careers these days. They're what we use to manage our relationships, and they're what we use to handle money, to navigate, learn, and more. So, if you're going to spend time training your body, it only stands to reason that you should spend at least the same amount of time training your brain. So, why aren't more people already training their brains? Largely, this comes down to the fact that many people don't realize quite the extent to which their brains can be trained, or quite the extent to which their brain function can be improved through simply following the best health practices, through the right nutrition, lifestyle, and more. And more to the point, most people are completely unaware of just how unhealthy their current routine is for their brain. They have no idea that the things they're doing every single day are actually damaging their brains. And not only does this prevent those people from performing optimally every day, but it could also lead to a higher chance of dementia or Alzheimer's. Just think what you could accomplish if instead of degrading and abusing your brain, you instead focused on nourishing it, training it, and helping it to grow. You might just become limitless. As mentioned, most people have at some time shown a basic interest in improving their physical fitness and strength. For this reason, most people have at least a basic idea of what fitness training entails and how to look after their body's health. But seeing as brain health is a far less understood topic, this is an area that many people actually lack even basic knowledge of. This video series will serve as the basic primer and introduction to your brain, as well as an advanced guide to how you can develop it and nurture it. We'll cover everything from the basics of how the brain functions and good nutrition, all the way to much more advanced topics such as smart drugs and embodied cognition. You'll learn how your brain works, the nature of intelligence, how brain plasticity changes everything we once knew about the brain, why the right nutrition is crucial for optimum brain function, the best lifestyle practices for increasing intelligence and improving performance, how to increase focus and concentration, how to train your body to train your mind, how to use the right kind of brain training to enhance your cognition, how nootropics work, who is taking them, and whether you should take part. Psychological tricks like CBT to help your brain work for you. The power of meditation. How to increase brain power by electrocuting it. Top things you need to stop doing to avoid damaging your brain, and much more. By the end, you'll have a far fuller understanding of your own brain and how to make the most of it. As a result, you can start to improve specific aspects of your brain, as well as its overall function. This will have a huge impact on pretty much every area of your life as you become more effective in social settings, less tired, more sympathetic towards others, and better able to manipulate their emotions and thoughts, more attuned to your own strengths and weaknesses, and more. Once you learn to upgrade your own brain power, you can trigger exceptional improvements in every area of your life. Are you ready for that change? The brain is by far the most powerful computer on the planet, with billions upon billions of connections and a near limitless storage capacity. There are still countless things we don't fully understand about our brains, but nevertheless, we are starting to understand more and more over time. And with each new discovery comes new ways to get more from our grey matter and upgrade our performance. The good news for you is that all this information is freely available now, and you don't have to go through years of complex experiments and research to unlock all the secrets. In fact, this video will serve as a complete primer to bring you up to speed on your brain. But a word of warning, this is complex stuff. If you just want to get to the good stuff and start learning how to get more from your brain, then you can skip this video. However, I highly recommend that you do not, seeing as it will give you a far better understanding of what's actually going on inside that skull of yours, and thereby give you more autonomy when it comes to discovering new ways to tap into your cranium's near limitless potential. The first thing to understand is your brain is made up of billions of neurons. Neurons are brain cells, and in a sense, they operate just like any other cells in your body. They have a cell membrane, that's the wall surrounding the cell. They have a soma, that's the body of the cell, which is filled with cytoplasm, which is fluid. And they have mitochondria to provide energy, and they have a nucleus containing your DNA. But brain cells also have a few extras. Specifically, brain cells have axons and dendrites. The axons are the long tails of your brain cells which protrude from the back. The dendrites, meanwhile, are a lot like roots or tendrils that stretch out across the brain coming off of the soma. The job of the dendrites is to find the axons of other cells where they can then form a connection. Neurons come in all shapes and sizes. While they are microscopic, they will sometimes have connections stretching all the way from one of the brain's regions to another to form connections. Brain cells don't actually touch, but instead leave a small gap called the synaptic gap, and communication then occurs across the gap. When a brain cell lights up or fires, this is called an action potential. During this point, a small electrical current jumps from the synaptic knob over to one or several connecting dendrites. This is how signals find their way around the brain. Each time a neuron fires like this, it corresponds to some kind of subjective experience in the brain. For instance, one area of the brain, the optical lobe, deals entirely with vision. When neurons in this region fire, it causes specks of light to appear like pixels in the eyes of the viewer. Meanwhile, other neurons might make us remember a specific event, experience a smell, move a finger, or fall asleep. Generally, neurons are arranged into groups, which is what gives the brain its distinct regions for particular activities like this. At any one time, you'll have a certain amount of activity in different regions of the brain. The entire brain is never lit up simultaneously. This will likely correspond with what you're thinking, what you're seeing, and what you're feeling at any given time. And the connections mean that seeing one thing will often result in you remembering something else or making the decision to do something. Note that neurons only fire at one amount. There's no degrees of firing. The cell is either firing or it's not. However, it might require input from numerous different surrounding neurons before it becomes excitable enough to light up itself. But it's not just a current that jumps across the synaptic gap during communication between cells. At the end of each axon at the synaptic knob are tiny sacs called neurovesicles. These contain neurotransmitters, which include the likes of dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. Basically, a neurotransmitter will change the excitability of your brain, the likelihood of memories forming, your attention, or your mood. For example, serotonin is the feel-good neurotransmitter. This means it will normally be released when we see, think about, or otherwise experience something that makes us happy. It's also released during exercise and when our body detects sugar. Meanwhile, dopamine is a neurotransmitter that gets released when we think of something important. This increases motivation, focus, and the likelihood of a memory forming afterwards. Neurotransmitters in this case tell us what we should be feeling about the experience of certain neurons firing. In some cases, a hormone can act like a neurotransmitter and vice versa. For instance, testosterone has an effect on our brain cells, as does cortisol. More often, neurotransmitters simply make a cell more or less likely to fire an action potential, which results in them being categorized as either excitatory or inhibitory. In order for neurotransmitters to have an effect on us, they need to interact with receptors located on the dendrites of cells. In other words, a neuron might release serotonin from its vesicles when it fires, but this will only have any impact on those connected neurons that contain serotonin receptors. Once upon a time, scientists believed that the brain would be set in stone after a particular age. In other words, it was thought that once we reached adulthood, the brain would no longer continue to grow or change shape. However, This has subsequently been found to be way off the mark. In reality, our brains continue to grow and change almost endlessly as we get older, and this is how we're still able to formulate new memories and learn new subjects. New brain cells can form in numerous regions of the brain, for instance, via a process called neurogenesis. At the same time, new connections can also be formed, and there is a simple rhyme to help you remember the rules here. Neurons that fire together wire together. In other words, if you repeatedly hear a particular sound while experiencing a particular smell, you'll eventually get to the point where those two neurons form a connection. Over time, that connection will become stronger and stronger via a process called myelination. Essentially, the axons and dendrites involved in the connection become better insulated, which strengthens the circuitry and makes it easier for one neuron to cause the other to fire. This is how we can end up rote learning particular movements to the point where we no longer even need to think about them. One movement simply triggers the next movement automatically and almost without our conscious input. Understanding brain plasticity, also known as neuroplasticity, is one of the most important secrets to improving your brain function. This is the mechanism through which all learning occurs, and thereby it can be tapped into to gain a huge number of new abilities.